Welcome to your home service coronavirus evening update. We do this every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We do a state of the world in the beginning, which is done by Mel. And then we also have a main topic. It can be anything from safety to operations, people like we're talking about today, how to understand the CARES Act. We also talk about business and marketing strategies. So that's what you're in for. Today, we have a really great topic lined up for you. It's home service HR in the age of COVID-19. So it's all of the questions we've been seeing in the Facebook group about how to handle certain situations. For example, my employee doesn't want to come to work today because they're scared that they're going to get the coronavirus, or am I allowed to take my employee's temperature? We're going to go through all of that. We even asked you on Facebook to share some of your situations, and we have them written down here so Mel can give you her professional insight on them. Other than that, if you want to rewatch any of our past episodes, please go to our YouTube, just type in House Call Pro, and you'll see a coronavirus playlist on there, and you can watch all of our past broadcasts for the past, well, going on 4 weeks now. Other than that, if you're not in the coronavirus discussion Facebook group, please join it. Just go on Facebook, the official coronavirus Facebook group, and I think Camille's going to drop the link there in the chat. Other than that, let's get started with our state of the world, and then we're going to get into our awesome topic for the day.
Great. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Melina Fairley, Senior Vice President of People at House Call Pro. Please feel free to call me Mel. I'm not a lawyer or an infectious disease expert. What I am is a human resources professional with over 20 years of experience, and tonight we're actually going to be talking about HR issues. On the personal side, I'm a military wife, a homeowner, I'm a mom of 4. My kids are in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grades, and they definitely deserve my thanks for putting up with these nightly broadcasts. I'm here at our dining room table. So we come to you live every weeknight. We give you a reliable recap of the highlights of what's going on in the world. And we bring you guests and research and a sense of community to help your business during these challenging times. So with that said, here's your update for Tuesday, April 7th, 2020. As of 3:35 p.m. tonight, the Johns Hopkins dashboard is reporting over 1.4 million confirmed cases globally, over 81,000 deaths, and almost 200,000 recovered. And here in the US, they're reporting, and there, Roland's going to bring that up for you.
There we go.
There we go. When I looked it up, we were over 387 cases. It looks like now we're nearing 400,000, over 12,000 deaths, and recoveries over 21,000. In New York City today, we reached a fairly grim milestone as the number of deaths in New York City surpassed the number of people who died in the 9/11 attacks. Yeah, over 4,000 deaths have been recorded in New York City. So my heart, my prayers are with all the impacted families tonight. Globally, we reported yesterday that the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson was admitted to the hospital and then to the intensive care unit. And today we heard that he's receiving oxygen, but not currently using a ventilator. And we'll keep you updated as we learn more. I heard lots of hopeful report for his speedy recovery. So we're hoping for that as well. And also internationally, globally, according to a report published by the UN's International Labor Organization, more than 80% of the global workforce is currently affected by some form of workplace closure. So I know that lots of businesses here in San Diego are experiencing that, but this is a global pandemic, not just a US or Canadian one. I know we've got our Canadian viewers as well. So
yeah. Speaking about global, WhatsApp is a huge app used mostly internationally. Obviously, Facebook Messenger is much bigger here in the United States, but WhatsApp is much bigger. And one of the things, obviously, that we try to do here is try to give you the unbiased news and to make sure that we're reporting facts. But WhatsApp has had an issue where it's really easy on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger too, to forward things to lots of people all at once. I've started to get spam messages on Messenger with all kinds of crazy nonsense. But just recently, WhatsApp has been experiencing a ton of this. And what they just did was they launched it so that you can only share one piece of information up to 5 times. And then those people that you share it to can only share it one by one to other people. So they're trying to stop their own like hoax and misinformation viruses from spreading by limiting the amount of shares that any one person can do. So just something to kind of stay aware of, especially, I mean, most of our viewers here are in the United States, but internationally as well.
Yeah, misinformation continues to be a challenge during this fast-moving news cycle. So today at the White House press briefing, President Trump referred to the virus as a monster and indicated that we're waging medical war on the virus. He reported that there are 8,675 ventilators that are in stock and ready to be mobilized by the U.S. military to the areas where they're needed most. He mentioned Louisiana and Michigan, two areas that are likely recipients of those much-needed supplies. He also shared that there are 10 drugs in active trials and 2 vaccines that have moved to clinical trials at this time. And he's asked Congress for an additional $250 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program, reporting that the Small Business Association as of today has made $70 billion in guaranteed loans through the PPP, but looking for more money to fund that program. And finally, President Trump promoted the hashtag America Works Together for Americans to share stories of working together and getting through this as a nation. So we're definitely starting to see more calls for hope and getting to the end of this pandemic in a way where we can all get back to, maybe not back to normal, but to a new normal.
A new normal for sure, yeah. And I feel like, you made the statement that $70 billion guaranteed loans through the PPP already. I'd be really curious for those of you guys that are watching here or on Facebook, if you do happen to get any of those funds, to just share and let us know which bank and also when you applied for it and when you actually got the funds. Because I'm not seeing too much of it yet. I've seen some pros that have gone through the entire process that have gotten some disbursement from that, but 70 billion sounds like a high number. So I'd love if you guys would share it inside the group with one another. If you guys are doing it, when you got it, when you applied, just so we can have some real-time information flowing in our own group here as well, in addition to kind of the nightly news that we have here. So that's my ask.
Great.
So we got a cool topic here. We're gonna Alexa back on. But obviously WWMD stands for what, Alexa?
Oh, we are very excited about this topic. WWMD, what would Mel do? This is not just going to be a one-time topic, everyone. This is going to be a series well after the coronavirus pandemic is over. Why? Because we have an HR expert at our disposal and she loves us. So she's going to share her knowledge with all of you on these really tricky and questionable situations that you might be finding yourself in with your employees. So what we've done is gathered all of the questions you guys have been asking about how to handle certain employee situations on the Facebook group, even some that have been sent in to us in other ways. And just what we've been learning about online. And Mel attends a lot of HR conferences and online webinars to stay up to date with policies. I'm sure she can tell you a little bit about that. But what we're giving you right now is we're going to go through a list of FAQs, and we actually already have this in a blog post for you, so you can go through and see what applies to you. We're also going to have a special guest on Texas Medley. He actually just did a podcast with JC, who is our videographer, on this topic. So he's going to provide some additional insight for us. And then finally, those of you who were awesome and commented on our Facebook post about situations that you're in with employees, we have them written down here in our program outline, and you're going to get live feedback from Mel about how to handle those situations. So without further ado, I've said that twice today. I'm so fancy. Let's go ahead and start going through these FAQs. We're calling this.
All right. So what's the first question? Is this one ranked by order of how many total people have asked this, or is this just?
Good question. I'm not sure, because when I read them, I'm like, these are all equally important.
I know I've seen all of these in the House Call Pros group and also the coronavirus group too.
Mm-hmm. So the first one, I'm going to go first. Mel, when is it safe for a sick employee to return to work, and can I require a doctor's note?
Yeah, so they're definitely recommending that we not require doctor's notes from employees at this time, because that could be contributing to our healthcare system being overrun. So folks that have, sick symptoms, should stay home. The CDC is issuing guidelines that they are constantly updating. So, checking the CDC's, website is a really great thing to do. At least 3 days since, recovery, or at least 7 days since symptoms are two, numbers for you to look at. So, continuing to look at the CDC's updates, because we're still learning more about this. But also remember, most people that are sick don't have coronavirus. They have the cold, or they have the flu, or they have something else. And so using just good common sense and little extra safety and security to just have a few extra days is not a bad idea. But we definitely should not be asking people to bring in doctor's notes to come back from work. We'll be contributing to the problem of people that really need healthcare not being able to get it.
That makes a lot of sense. So if someone does happen to test positive for COVID-19 and they were able to get their hands on one of those tests to actually get it done, is that something that you should let the rest of your employees know, and how would you handle that?
Yeah, actually, employees have a lot of privacy rights, just as you would want to, right? So if you are aware of someone's medical condition, that's not something that you can share with other employees. I mean, whether it's that they have, cancer, or if they have coronavirus, it's not something that we share. The Americans with Disabilities Act, definitely gives us guidance that, we should not be sharing employee personal health information. So instead, if folks were impacted at your work, meaning that they've been in contact with someone, and understandably in a small business, this sort of doesn't make sense if you're just 2 or 3 people, but let's say you're a dozen or 2 dozen people, just to let your employees know that that they may have been in contact with someone who has it, is what you should do. So you don't, if it were house call, I would alert that person's work group, whoever that they had been working around, that they may have been exposed to COVID-19, but I wouldn't indicate the name of the employee. And again, most of the time your employees are going to share that information with their coworkers anyway, but there are some who won't. And in that case, you should not violate that privacy and give them, information that they really don't need. They just need to know that they may have been exposed. They don't need to know by who.
But the employee themselves is at liberty to tell other people if they need to.
Absolutely.
Or if they want to.
But it's the Americans with Disabilities Act that restricts employers from sharing personal health information of an employee. And again, you think of it as like if someone told you they had cancer, you're not at liberty to go tell other people, right? In this case, it is contagious, so you do need to let people know that they may have been exposed. You do have an obligation to do that, but you don't need to let them know from whom that exposure might have happened.
What happens if you happen to let it slip to your employees and you didn't know about the ADA? What would you advise?
I wouldn't be worried. We're all doing our best. I think that good employers are going to occasionally do something that's not quite in line with the prescribed direction from the ADA or other legal bodies. These are things that are all meant to protect employees, to protect you, and occasionally we just don't know. I wouldn't be worried about anything that you've done. I'd focus on what you might run into going forward. And I think for most of us, because the spread is still in the earlier stages, these are all things that we might be exposed is maybe the wrong word. These are situations that we might run into in the future. So I think just getting clear about what you would do if it happens. So then if it does, you're ready. You're right there and ready to handle it.
So would you say it's okay to take the temperature of your employees as they kind of like walk in the building, or is that a no-no?
Yeah, so in normal days, it's definitely not something that would be typically allowed. They would see that as sort of an invasion of privacy and health privacy. But in this current environment, that is something that the EEOC has issued guidance that employers may take employees' temperatures during this pandemic because of the spread in the community. Many people have it without a fever, so other safety precautions should still be taken. So we shouldn't think of it as substituting for that. Like, you're not all clear if you come to work without a fever. The most important thing is that whatever you do for one employee, you would need to do for all employees, right? So your office manager, who's your sister-in-law, you've got to take her temperature just the same as you would, the newest tech that you just hired. So it's really about, treating people evenly and making sure that you're not unintentionally singling people out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so kind of with that same question about taking your team's temperature, can you ask an employee if they've tested positive for the coronavirus?
Yeah, you can't. So you don't get to ask an employee, what illness they have. You can ask people about symptoms, you know, and if they have symptoms, you can ask about fever, cough, shortness of breath, those sorts of things. Let me see if we've got, so just like with any other illness, I mean, your obligation is to protect your employees from any sort of possible, you know, infection from others. So, you know, you can send people home if they have a cold, you can send people home if they have the flu, you can send people home if they have shortness of breath. It doesn't just have COVID symptoms. So what you know, do is create an open environment with your where they feel really safe to let you know if they're not feeling well. I mean, that's going to be the number one thing. And then you don't have to worry about all that other stuff. Feel safe coming to you, letting you know, hey boss, I don't feel well. I don't think I should come in. And they know that you're not going to ask them 20 questions about their personal life. And if anyone in their house is having, you know, not obeying social distancing, if they just know that you're going to be supportive, then people are going to be honest with you and not try to sneak anything by. So you want to start with just that really, you know, empathetic, honest relationship with your employees. And it's never too late to start that. If you've got some folks, or maybe you haven't spent as much time with your crews as you would like to, you know, now's the time to start engaging with them and really build that trust. And then they're gonna do the right thing more often than not.
And then something that you always say, Mel, and you've said throughout this entire broadcast, and something that you preach at House Call, is that this is all part of your employer brand too. Your employees will talk once this is over. When you're hiring new employees, they're going to remember how you treated them during this time. So this absolutely goes hand in hand. That's why we're saying, even if you don't have employees right now, if you're planning on hiring during this time or in the future, people talk. Your employees will talk.
Oh, people remember how you made them feel. They might not always remember the words you said to them, right? I mean, maybe you did tell the other employees that they had COVID-19, even though they didn't really need to know that. But if you made them feel, you know, cared for, protected, if you're, you know, truly just show your good-hearted nature, your empathy, and people remember how you made them feel. I mean, that's the most important thing.
So I feel like the biggest question that we see in the groups and come up really often here is, you know, can employees refuse to come in if they're afraid of exposure? So can they say, hey, Mel, I don't want to come to work because I'm afraid that, you know, I'm not going to be safe in this environment. So how does that work?
Yeah, we've heard this one a lot. This has probably been the number one question, and it's the most challenging question. So I'll give you the answer, but then let's just kind of do a little gut check on it. So generally, employees don't have a right to refuse work based only on a generalized fear of becoming sick. You know, especially if that fear is not based on evidence of possible exposure. Current COVID-19, where many cities and states are seeing community spread, where we're learning that people don't have symptoms necessarily when they're spreading this. It'd be difficult to show that employees have no reason to fear coming to work, particularly if your location has a shelter in place rule and yet you've been deemed essential. So, you know, it may be necessary for you to take steps to show your employees that you're doing things to keep them safe, like distancing and making sure that you can do business without any unnecessary contact, if any contact at all, with the direct customer. So can you make them come to work? No, and you shouldn't, because if someone's saying, I don't feel safe at work, and this is really the point I wanted to make, they're giving you a signal. You know, they're saying something's not quite right with how we're doing things. So involve them in being part of the solution. You know, ask them, because even if they've got unemployment benefits out there potentially waiting for them, those benefits will at some point run out. And, you know, it might sound like a nice thing to have a few weeks off and you know, but it's not going to be the case when businesses start to close because there's no one available to do the work. So ask them, what's going on? Tell me more about this. Like, I'm concerned that you're afraid and I want to hear this out. Maybe they've got 2 or 3 suggestions in addition to whatever you're doing to comply with OSHA and to comply with providing a safe work environment. Maybe they've got some ideas that you hadn't thought of that will make the situation better. So really get in there and see what's going on, because they're telling you something. They're giving you a signal, and you should listen, because if they're not feeling safe, you know, maybe there's some improvements that you can be making that you haven't thought of yet.
So building on that, so Bonnie asked a question. So in this case then, so is it okay on your daily team calls to ask everyone how they're doing and feeling today?
Yeah, you can ask everyone how they're feeling generally. So what you want to avoid is asking people about specific medical conditions. That can be a violation of the ADA. So you can ask people generally how they're feeling, and specifically if anyone has fever, cough, or shortness of breath. The cleanest way is for you to stay away from the open-ended questions, just to like, how's your health? Because
Yeah.
I might have several health issues that I don't really want to share with you as my employer, and I certainly don't want to share on a call with other people. But hey, how's everyone doing with what's going on in the world? Want to check in, make sure, fever, cough, shortness of breath. But that should be something that you would ask individually. I wouldn't ask individuals to share medical, conditions and ailments in front of other employees. So stay away from open-ended questions. Ask about fever, cough, shortness of breath, and if there are any other symptoms that we start to be aware of. But those are the three that I would recommend asking about. You could just have people confirm, before coming in each day by text, like, hey, this is your morning check-in. Any fever, cough, shortness of breath? Cool, great, can't wait to see you. I know these questions are getting old, but can't be too safe. And as a reminder, this of all your coworkers as well, and hopefully that they respect and appreciate that.
And
yeah, I was going to say they would probably appreciate you just asking that, even if it's like every single day, because they know that you're asking everybody and that you're on top of it, and then you would let them know if they were at risk too. So I feel like, as annoying as it might seem, it probably is a really good benefit, something all of our pros should start doing and thinking about.
That was exactly what I was going to say. From the employee point of view, I know I would feel, I just like went to the dentist and they asked me those questions. I was like, thank you so much for asking that, because that means you're asking everyone that and you're taking the right measures. So not only for your customers, but also for your employees too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm kind of going out of order here, but it's really because this topic goes with Roland's last question. And this is a question we've also been seeing a lot in the group. It's not so much a question rather than like a topic. It's from Jennifer and also a bunch of other pros. It's on the topic of making your employees sign a liability form. Can I do that? And if I do, what is the best way to do that? I think it comes from a lot of people being scared that their employees could come after them if they got sick on the job, but also the opposite might happen if you're making them sign things.
Yeah, I don't recommend anything like that. If you're feeling so nervous about the safety of your work environment, you shouldn't be asking people to come to work. So you should provide a safe work environment, based on OSHA's recommendations. If you don't have enough personal protection equipment that are needed to do the job, you shouldn't be doing the job. If you are, you should feel, confident. You should take all the extra steps. Having someone sign something that says that they're okay to, what are you going to say? I am okay to get the coronavirus at work. I mean, if you have been negligent in providing a safe work environment, then that's a problem, whether someone signed a paper that says I'm okay with that or not. And on the topic of if something could be considered work related, if someone gets that's a workers' compensation question. So, you have workers' compensation insurance, and, causation would be difficult or impossible to prove, but this isn't something that would be up to you. This would be the adjuster rather than you. So since you can't do anything about, folks who have already been coming to work in the past, like focus on the situation going forward, focus on reducing risk in your workplace going forward in every single way you can. And also, I know lots of us at home, homeowners, we're getting lonely. So, we might see your crew coming and we might be kind of excited. The pool guy was here today and it took everything I had not to run outside, right? So making sure that you're also expecting really good behavior of your customers and letting employees know that they absolutely can just get back in the truck and leave if someone is not following those practices. So making it very clear. So, my pool guy should be making it clear to me that like, hey, I'm still coming to service the pool, and I'd appreciate if you keep your, you and the kids inside when I get here. He hasn't said that, but I actually wouldn't mind, right? That would show me that he's doing that with all of his customers, and that I would feel, better that he is on my property, because although he's not coming in the house, he still is parking his truck in my driveway and walking around my property and, touching things on my property. So, just make sure that you're truly providing as safe a workplace as you can, and then listen to your employees when they've got an issue with that. But I'm not recommending any sort of waiver.
Good feedback.
Mhm.
I feel
That's
like anything paper is only as good as, if someone can disprove something otherwise. So it's not going to always cover your butt every single time.
And I think another thing then to mention is we've had the questions about like, well, what about the person then that refuses to come to work? I feel like I've done everything. Some of my crew feel totally safe. We've got virtual estimates, we're doing touchless service. We're not taking and exchanging any papers. We're not exchanging any credit cards, homeowners in the other room while we work on the sink. But I still have some people who just are afraid to leave the house. In that case, you don't necessarily have to lay them off. They can still apply for unemployment, indicating that they are refusing work based on the current pandemic, without you having to terminate them for them to go do that. And in this environment, it's very possible that will be, qualifying for them, especially if you're not contesting it. But you don't have to lie. You don't have to say, okay, I'll pretend like I don't have work for you, because then, that's going to put you in a situation where you're then getting the forms from that employment office having to testify that you didn't have work for the employee. Instead, you could say, hey, work was offered to the employee, and the employee did not feel safe, participating in work outside the home due to the current situation. And they're asking through all of this new legislation, they're asking for the unemployment departments to be really liberal in how they're applying, existing rules to help support people during this time.
Do you feel like workers' comp is going to be more or less liberal than unemployment side of things, considering their insurance?
Workers' comp is not going to want to pay for something this contagious. I mean, the likelihood that any of us will know where we got this is near impossible. I think it will be, I'm not a workers' comp expert, I'm not a lawyer, but I think it'll be very difficult for any individual to prove where they got the virus because of the community spread. I think that some of the numbers I've seen, only 2% of cases these days are, travel related, or like that very specific, the person who traveled came back, infected the roommate. Those were like the early cases. We're now to community spread where you just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so don't count on it, guys.
Don't count on that workers' comp. And our last question from here before we bring our awesome guest Texas on is, can we reduce our team's salaries during this crisis?
So you can reduce hours, you can reduce pay, you can reduce hours and pay. You just have to make sure that you're paying above minimum wage in all cases. Different states might have regulations about giving notice before changes in pay. In general, you should not ever change someone's pay retroactively. So if I'm doing work today, I need to know what I'm being paid today. And then if tomorrow my pay rate changes to a different rate, to be able to get that change in writing, so that then I have the choice to show up for that pay rate or not the next day. So I'm sure most of you don't have contracts with your employees. Most of us are at will this day and age, which means either one of us can terminate the employment relationship at any time for any reason, with or without cause. So just making sure that, because in some cases you might decide that, hey, look, I've got 5 people, I can keep all of them if everyone takes, a 15% pay cut. Talk with your employees, be open and honest about the current situation. No one's expecting things to be business as usual these days, but you can reduce employee pay as long as it's not retroactive.
So we actually have our guest Texas. He had a really good comment right now, and I think we'll just bring him on to say it. So Texas, I'm going to be promoting you to a panelist right now. Your video and your audio will hopefully start by itself, but if it doesn't, it'll be in the bottom left-hand corner.
I can see his name. He's here.
There, he's on.
We can hear him.
Oh.
Hey.
Yeah, we got it.
Welcome.
Well, now is a good time as any to have you on, because you had a really good response to that last question. And then what we'll do after this, Mel and I will cut our video for a few minutes. We'll let you enroll in chat, because you just did a really awesome podcast with JC that I think is live in on Apple Podcasts right now. It might be dropping tomorrow, but either way, you guys are getting a sneak peek of what Texas has shared on this podcast. And then Mel and I will be back to answer any questions you have around home service HR at this time. And we're going to talk through some of those examples you guys gave us on Facebook. So we will be back. We'll give you guys the floor.
Thank you.
Awesome. Me and Texas have talked quite a bit over, even more so, I feel like, in the past year. So you spent a lot of time with JC, obviously on the podcast. He came out to visit you to come film. You guys got some good food together. I was jealous. I remember that. But maybe before we get started here, can you share with everyone that's watching here, tell us a little bit about your business, how long you've been in business, kind of employee counts, maybe before, I'd say like before February, and then kind of where you're at now, just to give context.
Sure. So we've been in business, I guess, about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, something like that. There's eight employees and a subcontractor. So I guess 9 total, you could say, with only one office person. The rest are field staff in some capacity. And I certainly don't mean to come across arrogant when I say this at all, but I have no intention of letting this stop the growth. People are still going to need to be served, and they're still going to have heaters and air conditionings break regardless of this. Now, could it change buying decisions? Absolutely. But I don't see this to be an excuse to kind of sit back and just let whatever happens happen. I don't know if I answered everything you wanted or not.
No, that's good. So you still have the same amount of kind of employees as you did before the coronavirus and as you do now?
Yeah, I do. Now I do have, it's been kind of a whirlwind. If you listen to the podcast, then I got one guy who doesn't want to come in for fear of everything surrounding this. I've got the office girl who doesn't want to come in because of her daughter. So she's staying home with her daughter. And I get that completely. So that's 2 down. My dad actually works for me, and he's 58, I think. And so I'm not letting him come in.
You banned him. You're like, no, stay home.
And then a 4th guy just had his 3rd baby. So he's out. So we're just on a complete skeleton crew right now.
Mm-hmm. And how are you dealing with kind of the new demand? Obviously, like you mentioned, stuff is still breaking. It's not as if, the virus started and now things are getting used less. In fact, it's probably in reverse. Because people are at home more often, things are probably getting more use. So it's probably wearing and tearing much faster than it even normally would. So how are you kind of seeing that, and how are you dealing that with kind of the skeleton crew and that?
Yeah, so I wish I could tell you that there's some magic formula or silver bullet to that, but it's not. It's just boots on the ground. It's sucking it up. It's working harder, working more efficiently, working smart as you can. Obviously, now a company like ours, we typically only run about 3 or 4 calls per person per day because we don't want to rush. Well, that is kind of changed right now because, for one, we have to rush, but 2, people don't want us in their homes any longer than we need to be. So that's afforded us more calls per person per day in hopes that you're not sacrificing the quality of your service in doing so.
Yep. And obviously your office manager, she's working from home. How has that transition been, not being able to like physically get in the office and be there with her in the mornings, and then maybe after your calls are done, your guys' calls are done? What does that dynamic look like, and how's that changed?
Yeah, so the biggest part change surrounding that was she did other things other than just answer and schedule and dispatch and pull permits and things like that. She would actually parts run for us. So if we were stuck on a call 20 minutes away, we could call her and say, hey, can you go here, get this, and bring it to me at the job? And so that was a big part of what she would do as well, in addition to what you would think is a typical office role. So that's definitely an element that we're missing right now that's taking a toll. But the guys we have here that are working, everyone's really pulling together. And as far as from the administrative side of things, the day-to-day, what you would think of as your typical office operations, it's not that big of a change other than there's a kid screaming in the background every now and then when a customer calls.
But I
There's
feel
other
like customers
few
these
that
days
actually.
are very like understanding, it's almost I don't want to say endearing is the right word, but like it's almost expected. It's like, hey, yeah, we're all doing our part. We're working from home. We're protecting you guys in the same way that we're protecting our own. So we take this very seriously. That probably comes across really, really, really well to your
It's a pretty
customers.
cool conversation piece is what we've noticed. A lot of times you'll get the lady call, oh, I hear a little one in the background. So
Mm-hmm.
it, I think that yes, you want to be professional at every turn, but I think that knowing when it's okay to kind of let your shoulders drop a little bit and ease up is important as well.
Yeah. And I feel like it's going to be more now than ever as time kind of progresses, as this kind of becomes more of like the new norm, at least for the next couple months. Like you mentioned though before, it's not going to stop the heat from coming, especially where you guys are at. So I feel like for the businesses that have thought through their operations and kept everyone fully employed, are going to be the best to kind of take advantage of this. Because I feel like a lot of the smaller shops or people that don't have their organization in check or haven't thought about how to keep their culture and their team intact, there's going to be more opportunities, more at bats for the companies left standing. Like, what are your feelings there? And is there anything kind of share there that maybe you've thought of to prepare for that?
Yeah. So the first and foremost, the most important thing is to recognize that this is not an infinite situation that we're faced with. It's not going to go on in perpetuity. At some point, this will end. Life will go back to maybe not like how it was before, but to a more normal standard. This, it could absolutely change behavior for ever. However, I think it's important to recognize that it will end at some point and to not let the fear surrounding all this drive every decision you make. And what I mean is, they were talking about cutting pay, and I absolutely get it if you don't have a choice. I absolutely understand if there is no other source of income if the company can't afford it or whatever the circumstances may be. However, for us, I would it would have to be really bad before I could do that. I feel like that would just cause a fracture within the company. And not that most people wouldn't understand, because absolutely they would understand. They're going to understand that most people are not even working right now and they are able to continue working. But for someone to tell me that that wouldn't cause a little bit of downtroddenness, kind of make you feel beat down a little bit, I think that would just be inaccurate to say.
Yeah, definitely. So on that end, have you gone through like the EIDL process or the PPP, or have you done some cash reserves the last summer to kind of carry you through now? Like how are you able to do that?
Yeah, so we operate our business on we don't leverage ourselves. It's probably stifled our growth in some ways from a revenue perspective, but it's helped us generously from a profitability standpoint because we don't owe anybody anything. I mean, we rent our shop, so yeah, we could get kicked out of there, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's not like it would foreclose on me. So I think that one thing is, for anyone who hasn't done it up to this point, would be prepare for something like this going forward. Remember the way it feels, because it will happen again. Something will happen, and the economy will contract again in the future. So definitely, we follow Dave Ramsey principles almost to the T. Not exactly, but very, very close, because it's good common sense. Save up 3 to 6 months expenses for when life happens, because life will happen.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like from a personal finance perspective, that's a great position to be in, and that everyone should make sure that they can get to, so that when stuff like this happens, this 3 to 6 months period, you don't have to make any unnecessary or rash decisions that are more emotional fueled, and it gives you the leeway that maybe others don't have. Obviously now we're in the middle of it, so it's hard for someone to get to that state.
It is, but unfortunately, and I really hate to sound callous, but unless you're just a new business, it probably means that something was broke for a long time and it's just not being exposed.
And one of the viewers here, so Bonnie says, Dave Ramsey protocols. Can you share what that is? Maybe just like a high level. What are his like tenets? What are the kind of the core things that you guys adhere to?
Give me a second here, because I don't want to mistake them, because they do go in order.
Yeah.
Okay, so he calls them the baby steps, and there's 7 of them. Baby step 1 is save $1,000 in a starter emergency fund. Baby step 2 is pay off all debt except for the house using the debt snowball. We can come back to that if somebody cares to. Step 3 is save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund. Step 4, invest 15% of your household income into retirement. 5, save for your children's college fund. 6, pay off your home early. 7, build wealth and give. So the approach that we take is if you can't afford it, you don't need it. Is kind of it, a very simplistic way of putting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing too that is important to consider when we're not in times like this, and you've got a little more freedom. Whenever you buy something that is a want, not a need, take that same amount of money, so double it. Take that same amount of money and put it away. So what it does is it makes all your wants twice as expensive, but you're putting it away, and in that way you can a little more freely without feeling guilty about it, because it's forcing you into that savings effect. And I see a lot of companies employ this exact same method. They're investing in trucks, when they're investing in different assets, definitely investing in tool, things like that. Because as you imagine, just like a house too, things depreciate. You're going to have to replace things. You're going to have to fix things. And oftentimes when you're buying things and they're brand new, you're not even thinking about it. But there's a cost that will come and it will hit. And that's why people often find themselves like, where's the money? Exactly. And exactly. The nicer, more expensive it is out of the gate, the more expensive it's going to be to fix.
So one of my favorite ways to think about things, and I won't get too tied up into numbers right now, but it'll kind of help a lot of people think about their buying decisions from a company perspective, and I'm sure they could equate it some way to their personal lives. But let's take a company that has 10% net profit. That means for every $100 you generate in revenue, $10 goes in the bank, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So another way you could think about that is for every $10 you save, that's $100 you don't have to generate in revenue.
It's really powerful to think of it in reverse, because people don't always equate it that way. Like as easy as it is to spend it is also you can save. So when you're looking around, I hear that oftentimes actually with House Call Pro too. It's like, there's lots of different softwares out on the market, and what do you use? And it's like, okay, what do you really need to spend to get to that next step? And how much can you save and put that money away and put into use in different places? Because, when you take a look at some costs of, anything really OpEx related, but you're right. If you can save a little bit there, you would have had to generate a ton more money, $10 on every dollar of that cost savings to pay
scale
for it.
Just scale it now. Think of an air conditioning company. To spend $1,000 on a home service is not that much. And really, you probably spend $1,000 several times a year on something in your home breaking and having to get it fixed, if not more. So now, let's say you saved $100. Now that's $1,000 you don't have to generate. If you save $1,000, that's $10,000 you no longer have to generate to maintain that profit.
Yep. Yeah. No, this is really good feedback. So I feel like we've got a whole bunch of pent up questions here from pros, because we had them describe their employee situations, and I feel like you've gone through them. One that you don't want to send out into the field, one that's calling in and saying, nope, I don't want to go out in the field. So you've got, I feel like, one of each case. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through some of these problem situations, and then we're going to do kind of like a roundtable on how would you approach it, because you've already dealt with a lot of them, and then we see a lot that's out there. So I think together here we're going to try to dole out some great advice. Totally.
Okay, so I'll be in charge of reading them. This first one is from Shirley Thompson on Facebook. So this is a situation that she's describing. And Mel, Texas, Roland, you guys can respond after. I have an employee that called out sick last Monday with fever and cough, said he was going to the doctor, went to the doctor on Wednesday, has strep, told him not to come back until fever free. He said he would be in on Monday. Monday came and he didn't show. Texted him to check, said he thought it was Sunday, apologized and said he would be in today. This morning he texted and said he was not feeling well, but didn't want to go back to the doctor, and admitted that he lied about not knowing what day it was. He's only worked for us for about a month. Normally he would be let go as he is in his probation period. He had missed a couple days He had missed a couple days prior to this. With the new COVID-19 rules, we have to pay him.
Ooh, I feel like this is a good Mel one.
The new Families First Act does say that employees, no matter how long they've been with you, get 2 weeks of paid sick leave for COVID-related sicknesses and for some other things related to COVID-19. So once, so if you have symptoms and you're exploring whether or not this is COVID-19, then that would count, but once you just have regular, you've got a cold or, you've twisted your ankle or whatever it is, that's not COVID-19 related. So that's not part of the Families First. So you should treat people like you've been treating them with regards to attendance, and certainly honesty, that's a whole other thing. So if you've got an employee who has not been with you for very long and is putting themselves in a compromised situation as far as being honest with you, normal rules of business apply. You don't have to keep dishonest people on payroll. Now, that being said, if someone's really ill and they're confused and ill, be empathetic. I've been asked on a daily basis from someone in my family who is not ill what day it is. But in this case, if someone says they're going to come to work, they don't show up for work, you don't have to keep them on just because of coronavirus. You don't have to all of a sudden, accept people not showing up for work.
Mm-hmm.
Texas, you were like, oh, I want to share.
Let me in there.
So what would you do? Put in, coach.
Well, no, I was going to ask Mel because I think I heard something that maybe in a different way than what she heard it. And that was it with the PPP program. Are you going to lose that ability to have the loan forgiven if you drop an employee for breaking policy or something like that?
No, the PPP is looking at your total payroll costs, not which Social Security numbers were on your payroll. So they're not saying that I have to keep Roland and Alexa. They're just saying I have to keep my payroll the same. So PPP wants you to employ people in, they're not concerned about it, essentially which person. So you can still discipline people, you can still terminate people, you can then hire someone else, and that will increase your payroll rate.
Was there not something in there, however, about if you let someone go, or if you have to fire them, or if you send them on unemployment, that you'll lose the ability to have the loan forgiven?
So you have to maintain your payroll costs. So if you normally spend $5,000 a week on payroll, you have to keep spending $5,000 a week on payroll. But play the extreme out in your head. Let's say you have an employee who's stealing from you. You wouldn't have to keep them employed to not have your loan forgiven. Right? Like sometimes you got to think of the super extreme case to go through it. So they just want you to keep the economy moving. They want you to keep paying people that $5,000 a week in payroll. So it might be a slightly different roster of people based on what business you've got going on, or based on the behavior of your folks. And also they know that people are this is the sad reality, people are going to be sick, and there are going to be people who are unable to work. So you need to employ the right people, but they want you to keep your payroll costs at whatever their previous level was, your 12-month average. They want to keep those payroll costs up.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think they had probably the same misinformation that I had regarding that.
Yeah, it's not a free pass for all bad employees out there.
Yep, nope.
Okay, so our next question, or our next scenario from Facebook is from Travis and Heather, two of my favorite super pros. We have one employee that is scared to work for fear of bringing the virus home to his family. He is currently off, has been off for the last 2 weeks, which I paid him for, asking to be laid off until this passes. Problem is, I have work for him, so not too sure he can get unemployment. I'm not really sure what to do or how to handle it. He is a great employee, and I get where he is coming from, but I also have a business to run. How's that? What do you think of that? WWMD, what would Mel do? He literally said that.
I would offer the employee an unpaid leave of absence, which would maintain them as my employee. I would then also encourage them to apply for unemployment because of not working any hours, and that they would just state honestly that although work is available due to my family situation and the current pandemic, I am uncomfortable accepting work at this time. So that keeps them, it sort of becomes more like a temporary layoff, or what might be called a furlough, where you're just not scheduling them any hours, but you are maintaining them as your employee, and they should be able to qualify for unemployment.
Yeah, what would you do, Texas? Obviously, this employee has work that they could be doing. Would you take it up? Would you bring them back after this because of that or not?
Now is this the same employee that was telling all those lies?
Now, this is the good employee. This is someone who
This is
is
the
a
good one.
great employee.
So yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking at the overall context of the situation and the individual. Are they generally a high performer and have a legitimate fear? I'd probably have a little bit more grace for an employee like that than someone who's just opportunistic, looking for a way to not to come in and get a free check. I don't think it's real cut and dry.
And also, if you offer benefits to your employees, your benefit provider may at this time be extending benefits to people who aren't actively clocking hours but still remain your employees. So even up to not working at all. I know our benefits provider, normally you have to work 30 hours to receive benefits, but they have made at least through May 31st an exception to that even if someone's hours were reduced to 0, we would still be able to keep them on our medical plan, which is not the normal situation. So there could be some
That's
good
a good thing to
reason
consider.
to just an unpaid leave, as opposed to laying them off.
I was actually having a conversation with my fiance last night about the situation, and what I think you don't want to have happen is some people coming to work, taking the risk, doing the jobs, trying to keep everybody moving forward, seeing other people stay at home, collect money for doing nothing, and causing that ripple in the culture that says either, hey, now I'm mad at this guy because he sucks, he's lazy, or hey, I just want to stay at home and get paid too. And
Yeah,
so I think it's important to.
And here's where I
that.
think you really test what kind of folks you have on your team, because I will guarantee you that the person that hustles, works hard, and is a favorite of your team, if they have legitimate concerns, even if other people think they're kind of irrational, you're not going to turn on them. You're going to say, I know that guy, he works his tail off, he's always there for me. Hey, I don't get it that he's not up for coming in, but that's all right. I am, and I'm going to head in. If you've got people who haven't been good team players, who haven't been good for the business, who others on the team think are always only working at 70%, and then they're the ones who opt out for concerns, yeah, you're going to find out, real shortly what the rest of the team thinks of them. But I know my team, hardworking, amazing group of people, and if any of them had a legitimate concern, the rest of them would not turn on them. Not good people that work their tails off. Not going to happen.
So I want to touch quickly on, this is on the same thread, but it actually comes from an employee perspective, and there was a lot of discussion on it today, and it's definitely something I've been seeing in the group. So it's from an employee perspective, and it's on this whole, I'll read it to you guys from Brandy. So I would be curious to know your thoughts on all of these, in quotes, they shouldn't be paid to do nothing comments I'm seeing from several business owners regarding the PPP. I'm not an owner, so maybe I'm more of a bleeding heart in these scenarios. IMO, what's IMO mean?
In my opinion.
In my opinion, your employees likely haven't had a break in a very long time. How many of you offer vacation/benefits? And many aren't doing nothing because they're home with your kids and facilitating e-learning regardless. The employees you fear are doing nothing are staying home as advised by local government. Where did this notion come from that your employees must continue to put themselves in the world to make it while many owners and administrators are safe at home working behind a computer? So would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this argument.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think good people want to take care of their families. They want to do right by their company. And I think there are good people who are totally okay with being part of the essential services sector and getting out there. And I think there's some good people who are just nervous and who aren't. And I don't think that those good people are sitting home doing nothing and just collecting money. I think they're taking care of themselves and taking care of their families and doing what they need to do. But it's all about hiring good people who care for you, care for your business, and you care for them, and it goes both ways. So I'm not concerned. I don't have an employee in my company that if they were uncomfortable, I'd be concerned with them taking advantage. We've got good people, and I trust them.
Just want to offer your insight on this?
Did you say me?
Or yeah, please offer some insight on this, and maybe roll into what are some let's talk about this again. What are some alternatives of having of items that you can have your techs even do at home, people who are working at home? Let's give some alternative options rather than just doing nothing.
Well, I think first of all, that person that said that maybe they have a bleeding heart, I think that's probably a sign that they're a caring person. So good for them. I think that it's important to have a real world idea of what essential is. So obviously you wouldn't tell doctors don't go to work right now. They're critically essential. We need them right now. Same thing with firefighters. I mean, are we going to tell them not to go either? So where's that hard line drawn at? And for us, it's been people with no cooling right now who need repairs and installations. It hasn't been the people, hey, I just want to get my little maintenance done. Yeah, it's important, and yeah, we do need to get that done, but that's not essential right now. So I think that having clarity surrounding what essential is part of doing your part to be a good servant in the community and serving these people.
Mm-hmm. And so, to the earlier question of if you've got employees who are saying that they're feeling unsafe, open that dialogue, because maybe what they're going to tell you is, well, I don't feel like we really should be doing this work. I feel like you're sending me out on jobs that don't make sense that we're doing right now. Maybe you're going to find something else out. So if you're getting that signal that they don't feel safe, lean into it. I mean, thank them. This is a gift. This information is going to be helpful. You will be better for hearing about it. And then lean into that and figure out what's really going on. Alexa, I had one other question that we had teased for one of the things that we would go over for tonight, which is like, hey, like your high risk folks, if you've got anyone in your business who's, expecting, or Texas said he sent his dad home, should you be doing something different with those folks? And I'm gonna let Texas send his dad home because that's his dad. But otherwise, you should not be making decisions as to who is at risk and who is not. We're all at risk. And so you should not send employees home because you believe they're higher risk. So this includes pregnant employees. I know it's out of the goodness of our heart that we want to caretake for people, but I would just encourage that you make the same opportunities available for everyone in your workforce. So whether that's, expectant, women, or whether that's people who are older, what you don't want is unintentionally, out of really trying to do the right thing, you've unintentionally created a situation where someone feels discriminated against because of their age or because of a pre-existing condition or disability. I mean, that is really probably the most dangerous thing that you could do right now, is to start treating your employees different based on characteristics like age or gender or pregnancy related condition, pre-existing condition. So you can still tell your dad what to do though.
I keep telling my dad to stay inside. He's not listening to me. It's so funny how the roles are reversed in this situation.
Right?
Don't need to go outside. You are at risk. He's like, I'm going to go to the beach.
Send him home.
I know. Let's see. Is there any other questions in that you guys have? Mel answered like pretty much all of them. Or
I answered quite a few questions. We had one in there from a cleaning company that they're saying that their employees are asking for a specific type of mask that is just not available. They're going into empty buildings, empty apartments. They're going in 72 hours after all folks have been gone. And, it sounds like they're doing the right thing, but should they be worried about risk? And, I'd say it sounds like you are doing the right thing to provide the resources that are available, especially if it's no contact with any people. That is, according to OSHA, a very low risk occupation at this time. So, but my recommendation and my answer was to lean in, ask the questions, find out what's going on. It might be that they're feeling like, hey, maybe this isn't an essential service right now, and I don't even want to leave my house if I don't have to, if it's not essential. Or maybe they've got 3 other things that they wish they had that are available that you didn't realize that you could help them with. So have them be part of the solution. Usually the people closest to the problem have the best solution. So talk to your team.
Ultimately, they're the ones that are going to feel comfortable or uncomfortable, regardless of what you either provide them with or not. So let them be the barometer when it comes to that.
So since do we have another question? I think actually this is a great question to leave off on. And I actually think Anthony posted it in the comments too. So during this COVID-19 time when we're supposed to stay 6 feet away, how are we supposed to even find field techs to work for us and promote that we're hiring at this time? Let's end on a positive.
You want to know where to find them? The supply houses. Everyone's talking about who's laying off. They're everywhere. It's yours for the picking.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to find out, just go to a local distributor. Ask them, hey, what have you heard? They know what's going on. They know who's struggling, who's not, who's laying off, and who's hiring.
Mm-hmm.
They also know who's paying bills and who's not, or who owes money and knows if business is actually struggling from both sides.
They'll sing like a bird if you give them a gift card.
And and then ultimately too, remember the distributors in the place where they need to make business work for them, which means they need to sell more units, sell more things. So the bigger they can make you become, they're doing gift for you, but really for themselves also. So they're definitely incentivized in all the right ways to help you find people. Obviously now is a good time when there might be that service tech that was working for your competitor that was either their GM or maybe their ops manager or someone that you've always had your eye on. Now's a good time just to reach out and say, hey, what's going on? How are things with you and your family? Just so you know, I've got a lot of work. If you were open to it, I'd be happy to have you. These are good times to reach out and just reach out in a very innocent way. Just ask them, hey, how are you doing? And then often times, good business owners will want to find good homes for people that maybe they would have had to let go. So you can also reach out direct to them. Remember, if those businesses probably still have listings, and those listings phone numbers are probably somehow getting to the owner because they're usually the last person standing. So even just reaching out like that is definitely a good idea to use to find service techs.
Mm-hmm. So kind of leaving it off, this was our first theme of WWMD, and it will not be our last. And maybe next time we'll do a WWTD. What would Texas do? Maybe it'll just be a whole thing, because we at House Call love interviewing Texas. There's a bunch of stuff with him on our blog because he offers really great insight. So
listen to the podcast.
Yeah,
listen to the podcast. We'll post a link here for all of you guys that are watching this.
And Bonnie had another great point, leaving it off, working with associations in your industry and to find places or going with the supply houses. You can also share information like these 5 p.m. House Call Pro coronavirus webinars. So that's where we want to leave it off. Keep inviting your friends in the home service industry to this group, even people who just own small businesses. It's that valuable. We're not letting people in. If you want to be in the group, like, you can be in here because there's so much valuable information. So if you're not on the Facebook group, join. We'll post the link in there to all of the HR questions Mel covered today. And then we'll also post the link to Texas's podcast with JC in there. Whether or not it dropped today or tomorrow, I'm not quite sure. But we will see you tomorrow here for another episode of our evening update. Wednesdays, we've decided to theme as well. They're now our workshop Wednesdays. We figured we were doing a lot of tutorials with you guys. We did a Canva one. We did a MailChimp one with Roland and Scott. So on Wednesdays, we teach you how to actually go in there and do the work, whether it's creating gift cards, whether it's creating a text blast. So that is our goal for Wednesday. So we'll let you know what that topic is, but be prepared to learn and know how to do something after tomorrow's webinar.
Yeah, this is going to be a great one for those of your workers that do not want to go on the field, that want to do something from home. If you have them watch Workshop Wednesdays here on the Coronavirus Nightly Cast, they're going to have a new set of skills that they can use to help your business out, even when they're at home. So, thanks again too, Texas. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on.
We're like, can you call Texas and see if he wants to join us? Of course, JC is like, I'm on it. But thank you for coming on tonight. So I can't actually end tonight's webinar because Mike and Oliver are going to come back on and help me figure out what's wrong with our Zoom casting. So everyone, feel free to leave the webinar. Please leave the webinar so you don't see us trying to do all the stuff behind the scenes. So I'm not ending it right now, and it's on you to leave, even though this was great hanging out tonight. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time.
Sounds good. Bye, pros. Bye, everybody.